Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. We are a year-round talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, and theater. And today we're so lucky to be joined by Jock McKissic, who is currently starring in the Showtime series, Your Honor. And I wanted to start by talking about your audition process for the show, because you didn't just walk straight in to audition for this character and land that role. You actually went in between self-taping and in-person auditions. You ended up reading for 3 different characters. So I was really interested in just that process and that journey of auditioning for each of these different roles, and how the details of each actually helped to give you more of a picture of what this show was going to be as a whole as a result.
Yeah, that's correct. So once I found out that they were doing the show and Bryan Cranston was doing the show, um, I've always had like a goal to work with him. Like Breaking Bad is my favorite show of all time. So I reached out to my management and told them like, hey, listen, any role you guys can get me in, like I'll read for it. I don't care if it's 1 line, 2 lines, it doesn't matter. So that's what they did. They got me an audition, and the initial audition was for a character called Lil Mo. And I knew I wouldn't get the character. It's Lil Mo. I'm a big guy, unless they were doing like a play on words like they tend to do with big guys. So the first audition, I taped it and emailed it in, sent it in, heard back in like a few days, and they wanted to do a producer session and director session in New Orleans. So my manager called and asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, yeah, I'm going. I'm flying to New Orleans because if I get in the room, they'll probably ask me to read for something else if I do a good job. So I flew to New Orleans, rented a car, went to the audition. And when I went into the room, well, before I even got into the room, when I got to the audition, I noticed the other little moles, and they were like little people, you know what I'm saying? Like, not little, normal size. I'm bigger. So they were normal size guys, like, 5'8", 5'9". I'm like, okay, yeah, this is probably not gonna go my way for this character. So they saved me for last for whatever reason. I go in, I do the audition, and immediately after the audition, Peter Moffat, the creator, he hands me a script. He was like, "Hey, I want you to read for this character, Dwayne." And so it was like 2 lines, and he was like, "You can step out and take all the time you need." And I was like, "No, I'm ready now." So he's like, "Okay, cool." So I did it, and afterwards, he was like, "Phenomenal job." I said, "Thank you guys. See you later." I leave. And as I'm getting into the car, the casting director, she runs out and she's like, her name is Megan Lewis. She runs out. She's like, out of breath, like, Jack, they want you to read for this other character. And I'm like, okay, cool. So she hands me the script and she's like, his name is Alan Underwood. He's the bailiff. And he'll, be in a lot of scenes with Brian. So that's good. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I look at the sides and I see it's like his introduction scene. And I see that it's like a 50 to 60s white male. And I'm like, okay, this is I don't think I'll get this one, but I'll do it. So I go back upstairs, and the director, Edward, he steps out and he's like, "Hey, we're done with seeing everybody else, so you can take your time. We'll stay as long as you need." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I look at the script for a couple minutes. I go back in and I do the audition. And after the audition, Peter Moffat says, "Hey, so we're looking for a judge. You think you could be a judge?" And I knew he was being funny because, of course, Bryan Cranston is the judge. But that let me know that I did a good job in the audition. So, I joked with him. We laughed about it. And when I left the room, I said, "I'll see you on set." And a couple days later, we got an email with an offer for me to choose between the Dwayne character and Alan Underwood. And of course, I chose Alan Underwood because, more scenes with Brian. So yeah, that's how it
It
happened.
sounds like for It sounds like between reading lines for characters there that you were saying didn't necessarily match you, like reading, a guy who's in his 50s and white, and even just the
hmm
way that you were saying that you have experience in going in for characters like Little Mo, where they want to do a play because of height. Have you had a lot of other auditions as well where, looking at the character log line and the breakdown of who they are doesn't necessarily kind of match what you're seeing for the character? And when you have those moments, how do you then look at the lines that you have, look at the scenes, and just kind of completely construct this character in your own way when you can't really rely on the log line because it's not necessarily a match for you?
Well, those I don't get many of those, and that's the problem for me. I think I get more of the African American huge guy, and the ones where it's like open ethnicity, you know, male. Those are the ones that I long for. I want those roles because they're not looking for a particular person. And if I do get an audition for someone specific that doesn't fit my stature, then I just try to give them more of me, of who I am, and try to make them change their mind. And just thankfully, I was blessed enough to change Peter and Edward's mind about the white bailiff. So I don't do anything. I don't say per se different when I see a log line that doesn't matches me. I just try to give them me and change their mind, I would say.
Yeah. One of the things that's so striking about the series as a whole is the overall tone and just that feeling of anxiety that it really
Hmm.
exudes in every single scene. And Peter has such a specific vision in how he's created that, which trickles down to the performances and the delivery. So what was that journey like for you in terms of just learning about and understanding the vision that Peter had and the overall tone and aesthetic feel that he wanted for the series, and then thinking about how you could bring that into your performance?
So I knew the type of writer he was because of the night of. And so when I got the opportunity to go to the table read, I knew my character, my character is he was a supporting guy. And I knew he wouldn't have much to do in the table read, but I wanted to go to kind of meet Peter, meet Brian, and see like the vision that they had for the show. And that's kind of what happened. And he just explained like the vision that he had, and he wanted everybody to show up to work with ideas as well to kind of put into the show. And like you said, the type of show it is, um, it's a lot of up and down. It leaves you on the edge of your seat the whole time. And going into each scene, Brian he'll kind of say like where he is at this moment to kind of put the people around him in that same, if they're supposed to be in that same feel. Because some people sometimes, like, there were some scenes where we're not in the know, so we're just just moseying along with our everyday life. And there are some scenes where we're all kind of on edge about certain stuff. So he did a real good job of kind of keeping us up to date to where we were with all of this anxiety and all over the place. So yeah, it was definitely a journey for
Yeah.
sure.
When you're taking on a character like this, where it's a supporting role, when you're looking at the overall scripts and, even beyond just the scenes that you're in, what were the most useful elements beyond your character's own actions and dialogue within the scripts, or, whatever scenes you had access to, that really helped you in terms of finding and grounding your performance within the show as a whole?
So when even if I do have a smaller character, I like to read the entire script because it kind of gives you an idea of the pacing of the show or the mood of the show. So knowing like the tone, knowing the tone of the show and like how they do, I like to watch other scenes as well that I'm not in to kind of see like the pacing. So when it gets to my scene, I can kind of add to it with that same pacing. So I always like to watch other scenes, even when I could. Pre-COVID, I could, but when we went back to film during COVID, it's like if you're not filming, you're in your trailer or you're in your hotel. So yeah, just that definitely helps when you dive into the entire script. Being a supporting character, it helps you add to the script as well.
And once you were on set filming, was it very much that the way that everybody worked kind of fed off of Bryan Cranston's specific approach to kind of like building out scenes and figuring out what that rhythm was going to be? Or was it something where it was kind of just like everybody's working styles really coming together in the moment?
So I would say, in my experience, it usually trickles down from the number one, like the lead of the show. And when you have a Bryan Cranston who has such great energy, he speaks to everybody. He makes sure he everyone's on the same page. It kind of it takes on that element what you just stated. So a lot of people, you see a lot of people kind of approaching the day like he approaches today. You also have Mike Stahlberg, who is a phenomenal, brilliant actor, and he would walk around with this briefcase, and in the briefcase he had literally every script You had like a bunch of notes from each scene. You had all of the characters with pictures and how those characters related to him. So it would be moments where they were doing scenes and Brian would like go to him to like recall a moment from an earlier scene as well. So you kind of see how Brian operates and Michael operates, as well as Peter, and you kind of fall in line. So yeah, that's definitely the case.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of piggybacking off that point of how it really trickles down from the number one. And, you've walked onto sets in a variety of different capacities and supporting, you've been guest, when you were starting out your career, you did some background and some stand-in work as well.
Mhm.
And kind of like, what's the way that no matter what role it is that you're stepping onto a set for, that you really kind of read the room and start to look at how everybody's working, not just even in terms of the cast, but also the crew, and just looking at what's that collaborative flow between everybody?
Yeah. So like you said, I started doing extra work, and
Mhm.
I I did it to kind of get a feel for the industry, and I was blessed to be able to be on some bigger sets to kind of see how they operate from the beginning. And you kind of just have to know your place. To kind of just stand back and be as small as I can possibly be at my height and stature. So um, one of the things that I've seen over time in the 9 years I've done it is it did trickle down from the number one to the director, and you see like these you know horrific stories, and when the number one is not having a great day, or the number one is just difficult to deal with, and you kind of see how that affects the crew. Everybody on set, all the way down to Crafty. So when there is someone who is a Bryan Cranston, or I've worked with Melissa McCarthy, a lot of people who are people who love to include everybody on set. It's a better work environment for everyone, whether you're an extra or
Mhm.
the number two person on the call sheet.
Yeah.
You kind of feel like you're included in what's going on for the day.
Mhm. And even within that, has it given you a really great opportunity to also just look at the different approach that people have in how they like to work on scenes, just kind of like observing from the side, like the types of conversations that they like to have, whether they like to do run throughs with their scene partners, and kind of like all of the different ways that different actors are approaching this on the sets that you've been on?
Yeah, that was one of the things that me and my little brother Patrick Walker, we talk about when you go into a set, and you it's like a fine line that you kind of walk when you're just a supporting character or a guest star, whatever the case may be, of bringing your own ideas, or bringing your kind of like your way that you prepare. You don't want to kind of ruffle any feathers, so it's like you kind of have to walk that tightrope to see how everybody else operates. And most of the time, when you're working with people who take the craft serious, they'll ask your opinion, and then you can kind of open up, and you feel better about the process then. So, like for example, I was on the show Queen of the South one time,
Mhm.
and I was supposed to do my scene at like 4 p.m., and it got pushed back to like 3 in the morning or something. So I'm on set, and when it got time to do the scene, I wanted to run the scene with the guy that I was in the scene with, but the first time meeting him was when they were like, "All right, let's rehearse," and I was like, "Oh man, like I want to ask him, can I run the scene? But I don't want to, mess up his process." He had his headphones in, he was listening to his music, and after we did the rehearsal, he walked up and he was like, "Hey, you want to run it?" And I was like, "Yes, let's run it." So you kind of, I guess you gotta be good at kind of reading the room, but in the same sense, you don't want to kind of take away too much of who you are by trying to accommodate everybody else. So it's a fine line for sure.
And with your character on the series, and thinking about his work and his day to day as a bailiff, what was that research or journey for you, and just really understanding not just what the day to day and kind of details of his job would look like, but also how that really specifically informs the dynamic that he has with all of these characters around him? Because even looking at the scenes that you're in with Bryan Cranston, there's a very specific demeanor. There's a
Mhm.
familiarity and a history between the two of them. There's a respect that he has for him, but at the the same time, like, even though they're friendly, you can tell that like they're not friends. They're not like going out to dinner and like grabbing drinks at the end of the day. And there's a
hmm
specificity to that. So what was that journey in terms of just really understanding how that would influence and impact a lot of the relationships that he has, even with characters that he's just kind of like walking by in an instant?
hmm So I have a cousin who is a bailiff. So, and I've been to court a couple times to see him. I've been in the courtroom a few times, and I would just notice their demeanor and how they act. So that was a part of the process of who Alan Underwood would be, and then who Alan Underwood would be to the story. Um, Me and Brian kind of had a couple conversations, and Peter Moffat as well. And basically, Alan Underwood is a early 30s guy who went to the military. He earned a Purple Heart. He got injured. He came home, got into law enforcement, and he met Bryan Cranston's character, Michael Desiato, and he requested him to be his bailiff. So they have a good relationship. They've been friends for a few years, and he's the guy that Judge Desiato comes to for advice in the court, like when he's contemplating something. And Alan Underwood is kind of cut dry. He's like, "This is what it is, boss. This is what I do." End of story. And they don't have that relationship where they would go get drinks, but they link up outside of the courtroom. You'll see later, for a couple events. But definitely, once I heard that and I talked to Peter, I understood who Alan was, not only to Judge Desiato, but to everybody. So when somebody comes in the courtroom, they say something I don't like, I give them a specific look. When I'm having conversations with other characters, it's the same thing. Like, you're going to get the same Alan Underwood no matter who you are. So yeah.
Yeah. And what were some of the details, kind of even beyond that, in terms of his personal life that you found it really useful to construct so that, even though you're not playing to that specifically in a scene, that it would be part of the overall fabric and makeup of who he is as a person?
Alan Underwood.
Yeah.
Oh, so the biggest thing was the military background, and then him being injured and coming home and getting into law enforcement. So he's a guy who he'll put his life on the line for others for sure. Um, he's a person of service. He serves the judge every day, goes to work, and he takes pride in that. So that was something that I thought about every time I got ready to do a scene as well.
Yeah. And prior to acting, you were originally pursuing a career as a professional athlete and we're on the
hmm
NFL track for a while. And I was really fascinated by that journey of putting so much time and dedication into something, and, the amount that you have to give of yourself for something like that. And it's very similar with acting, how much it asks of you as a person, but specifically kind of like having gone through that journey with kind of being on an NFL track and ultimately kind of like having to say goodbye to something that had meant so much to you and been such a part of your life. How has that really influenced and impacted the relationship that you have with your career now as an actor?
Oh man, that's a great question. So I knew that I wanted to be an actor young. I also knew that I wanted to play professionally. At first, it was basketball, and then it kind of segued into football. But the plan was to go to college, have a successful career, graduate, play in the NFL for 5 years, retire, and start a production company. So when that plan didn't work, at first, I was extremely distraught. Um, I went on to play arena ball for a year and a half. I got a workout with the New York Giants. They didn't sign me. I went to mini camp with Saskatchewan Roughriders, a team in the CFL. They released me. So it was a bunch of ups and downs that was they were kind of like determining like my life. You know, I was giving my power to everybody else and not myself. So once it happened, once the Saskatchewan Roughriders released me, I kind of had a moment of peace, like instantly. The moment I got off the phone, hearing bad news for like the umpteenth time, I just had peace, and I was like, it's time to move on to the next dream, which is acting. And all of the hard work, the lessons, everything that went into sports, I take that and I put it into acting. And, mentally, when I look at the things that I went through with football and I compare them to the things that I go through with acting, it pales in comparison. So I'm able to deal with the rejection a lot easier with acting than I probably would have if I hadn't, went through all of the hardships that I did with sports.
Yeah. Well, I want to congratulate you on all of the work that you've got with your honor. I can't wait to see the last few episodes. I'm completely on the edge of my seat watching it, and looking forward to all the future projects that you have coming out as well. Thank you so much, Jock.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.